Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday, January 22nd at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, and we have our first guest speaker for the spring 2020 semester, Brianah McCoy. Woo!
Hello. I am obviously Bri. Elle kind of reached out to me, or I reached out to you actually, kind of slightly. I was asking about shirts, and somehow we got into a conversation of like what I do and what I'm doing at ASU, and it sort of snowballed into, hey, do you want to do this thing? And I was like, great. I don't love public speaking, fun fact, but I do it anyway because it's painful and it's good for you, and like it should help you in the long run. So if you ever have an opportunity to do that, I suggest you 1000% take the opportunity, even if it's uncomfortable or like you maybe don't want to do it. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about like how I ended up at ASU. I actually went to school. I went to a four-year university in the Charleston, South Carolina area. So actually like Myrtle Beach, if anyone's familiar with down south. A lot of people vacation there. I decided to go to college there. In high school, I actually played a lot of sports. So it was like track, cheerleading, like things like that. And I figured the only way like that I could actually go to college was if I went on a sports scholarship, because like I came from a family, like both my parents were in the military. My mom's retired, my dad's actually still in. So there wasn't a lot of like guidance, I would say, on like how to go to college because my parents didn't go that route. So a lot of my high school journey was like me figuring out if college was right for me, if I was going to go to the military, if I was just going to like, you know, graduate high school and like continue on. Nothing wrong with any of those paths. I just chose to go the college route because I really wanted to be a scientist, and I still really want to be a scientist. I think I've wanted to do that since I was like 10. And so I ended up getting a sports scholarship for cheerleading. So I was a Division I college cheerleader for 2 years. And I wasn't a huge fan of the hectic schedule, I would say. So like a lot of what I was doing down south was like I was going to class, I was working out, I was like traveling a lot, and my grades sort of like suffered because of that. So I decided just based on like logistics that I was going to take a step back and reevaluate like if this is something that I really want to do, if I really want to be a scientist, like I'm going to have to, you know, give up one of the things that I really love to do. It's like I either play sports and hang out with my friends, or I like focus and like try and get this done. So I ended up dropping out of college, much to my parents' surprise. They were not pleased with me about that. And I came home and I went to community college for probably, I would say like a solid year to like 2 semesters. And there, like in the South, it's quarterly. So I just kind of went like over the summer and then like one fall. So that was like a full year. And sort of just tried to like figure out, okay, what do I want to do? Like I need to recover my GPA. Not that it was like terrible to begin with, but I definitely didn't study as much as I should have. I was partying by the beach. Do not recommend. So I went back to Charleston, moved back home, went to community college, and it was kind of at that community college that I met one of the most influential teachers of my whole entire career. And she sort of just sat me down and was like, if this is something that you want to do, like you're going to have to figure out a way to do it, and no one's going to hold your hand. And she really just made me love science even more. And so it was kind of by her guidance that I sort of sat down and said, you know, I have to lay out a plan for this because my parents aren't going to help me. They're not a reliable source of information because that's not the path they chose. You know, people aren't just going to hand you things. So you have to really figure out how to work for that. So after I left community college, actually met my husband in Charleston. He was stationed there, and that's a whole nother story. But our sort of journey together, he got restationed in Seattle, Washington. So I obviously wanted to go. At that point, we were like in a pretty committed relationship. And so I left my community college and I applied to Arizona because I was like, you know, I need to have like a flexible like lifestyle. I still had to work up throughout this whole entire time. I've had like a part-time job. I think I've been employed since I was like 15 years old. So my lifestyle was really one that needed something flexible. So that's kind of when I started doing research on like online programs and things like that. And I chose ASU off of a whim because they had an online biology degree, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And I couldn't really afford to like go back to another 4-year university without a scholarship. So I ended up at ASU. And so, yeah, I'm an online biological sciences major. My career goal is obviously to be a scientist. I actually want to work for the government when I'm, finished, hopefully for like the FDA or the CDC or something like that. They have these initiatives that they lay out every year on like things that they hope to accomplish in the future. And so the one that I particularly find interesting and want to work on is healthy aging. Because it's super, super, super important. And as like you've seen, I'm sure, people are getting older, and they're getting older faster. And these diseases that weren't a problem 50 years ago are becoming an increased problem. And it's like, so how do we deal with that as a society? So I want to help answer that question, whether it be through intervention, like therapeutically, or whatever the case may be, trying to understand how people age, why people age, and if we can do something about that to make people not only just live longer, but there's this balance that you have to have between health span and lifespan. It's not enough just to live longer. It's like you have to be able to, function longer. So if there's an imbalance, if you're, not healthy, but you're living to 102, well, that means your kids are going to have to take care of you longer. So we want to figure out a way to like raise both of those, or at least health span, if we're not going to be able to raise someone's lifespan. So that's what I do at Harvard right now. I actually started my first, I would say, research experience in 2017 when I moved out to the Seattle area. There's this like teeny tiny liberal arts college called University of Puget Sound. And Seattle's kind of set up like a U a little bit. So Puget Sound's actually in Tacoma, or Tecompton for people that know the area. Not exactly the greatest town, but it was there that I sort of met one of my future professors, I would say. I don't even know where I was. I think I met her at like a Starbucks or something randomly in a line. So that's also a note. Talk to people. Like, you never know who you're going to meet places. I met her at a Starbucks, and she was like, come to my lab, like come see what I do and things like that. So it was there where I sort of got my first like hands-on experience in a lab, because a lot of it had just been at that point via online learning, or when I was actually in university, like, the limited lab experience that you get in your undergraduate degree, which I would argue is not enough to help you decide whether or not you want to do this full time, Yeah, like group projects are great, but it's a whole nother ball game when you're trying to tease out a problem like all by yourself, and you don't have people to fall back on, which is a lot of what I do during the day right now. So in the Damaris lab at University of Puget Sound, her lab was actually kind of, I would say, not what I'm focused on now. Most of the time I've been in aging labs, but it was there, I was actually working on cancer. So there's this protein called beta-catenin that hangs out in this pathway called the Wnt pathway. And that pathway is important for cell proliferation, so cell growth. And a lot, what we were studying is in our model organism in zebrafish, we were trying to understand the role of beta-catenin during the reproductive cycle. We had these zebrafish that had these like massive growths within their abdomen. And we were trying to understand, is this genetic? Is this a tumor? Is this something that's happening during their reproductive cycle that's making them sterile? Because that's a problem when you're trying to understand how a species procreates or reproduces, and you're getting this kind of like anomaly where they were just producing these eggs and there was nothing happening with the eggs. They weren't producing any offspring. So that can be detrimental to a population. So a lot of what she was interested in was understanding the mechanisms behind cell proliferation and cell growth, and like what that means for cancer. So I was actually in cancer research before I switched to aging. I love cancer research. I thought it was great. It's a pretty oversaturated, I would say, market right now. There's a lot of people working on it. It's a hot thing. which just makes it even harder to sort of keep pushing the boundaries in that area. Not deterring anyone from going that route at all, but definitely something to think about when you're pursuing whatever it is that you want to study. And for me, like if you're pursuing a PhD, you really want to think about what aspect, like, am I going to love doing this for the rest of my life? Because 6 years is a long time to spend on a project. If you don't love what you're doing, I would say it's going to be pretty hard, because I've been involved in some projects that I just maybe like didn't understand as well as I thought I needed to, or just maybe wasn't as interested, which is totally okay. Like you can sort of decide, nah, cancer is not really my thing. Like I'm interested in, you know, therapeutics or heart disease or whatever the case may be. But I would say
you want to figure out before you're committed to a PhD program.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like rotating and getting lab experience in you know, various labs, maybe it's something you think that you would never like in a million years. You know, I didn't think I would want to work with zebrafish, and I actually loved the experience. It was super fun. It was super cool. Like I got to play in an aquarium all day long, you know, like I don't think that I would use that as my model organism right now, but it was fun at the time. And like, I can safely say, like, this isn't the organism that I want to use. Like right now I work a lot with mice and yeast, because they're good for like aging models. I don't love working with mice. I like working with yeast. Yeast don't move. They don't bite you. Mice do. You know.
Although I'm going to go ahead and say that if you find a yeast that bites you, you have an entirely different field you could go into.
There you go. My thesis is complete. So yeah, that was my first experience, and that was over a full year. So I was like at ASU at the time, and I was kind of doing this like on the side for free. There's some labs that will allow you to be what they call like a lab volunteer, which I encourage you, like if you're interested in trying to find opportunities and things like that, reach out to PIs and people that are doing research in these labs and ask them how you can help them. Because it may not always lead to a paid internship opportunity right off the bat, but definitely they always need hands, 100% always need hands. So if you have extra free time, you know, I'm not saying sub it for like volunteer experience or anything like that, but that's definitely one of the things that you can do is you can reach out and you can ask, like, do you accept lab volunteers? And I think there's usually like a legal agreement that it's like, I agree not to like sell your data, you know, and stuff, which obviously don't do that. But yeah, there's opportunities to do that as well. And then like the other places that I've been, so after UPS, I finished my time there. I was like really looking for another opportunity to get more research experience. And I sort of was probing the internet, which, you know, is a dark place when you're looking for jobs and or opportunities. So I spent hours upon hours upon hours, like applying to places and things like that. And I was lucky in the sense that I was actually in an area at the time, Seattle's pretty biotech heavy. So there are a ton of opportunities there. In other places that aren't exactly biology heavy, I would say like maybe it'll probably be slightly difficult, but definitely start looking around at universities near you, because I guarantee you someone's doing something somewhere. And that was what was told to me by my mentor. She was like, you just have to search out these opportunities, because they aren't just going to come knocking on your door like, hey, do you want to work in my lab? So I sort of went down the dark web funnel, and I found government websites are not fun, but I did find on their shoddy produced website that they had like internship programs. So the National Institute of Health, they have, I believe, close to maybe 15 to 17 different sort of like individual like institutions. So like I was at the National Institute on Aging. They have a National Institute on Cancer Research and all of these things, but they're spread out all across the US. But they have one application, which is super phenomenal. And through that application, you can select like whether or not you'd be willing to relocate if they're in your area. A lot of them I know are in Bethesda, Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, which was where I was. There's one here in Boston and Framingham, but I do believe it's like cardiovascular research. There's one maybe in Arizona, like down in that area. And I believe they have a couple other ones, like Montana was one of them. That's where infectious diseases, they got to keep it far away from people. So yeah, they ask you on the application to select whether or not you'd be willing to relocate. They do pay you to relocate. They do pay you a stipend all summer. And that was huge for me because, like I said, I've been working this whole entire time. I pay for my education out of my pocket. A lot of people do. So it's not really super, like, I would say reasonable for places to be like, oh, we're not going to pay you, but I need you to move across the country for the summer. Like, that's not plausible.
Or just take 6 to 8 weeks off of your current job that's supporting your way of life.
Exactly.
To come get research experience. Yeah.
100%. And I think that's one of the things that hopefully will change, and I think is starting to change about the research environment. People are starting to recognize that like you can no longer have unpaid internships. Like it's just not something, I mean, there are institutions that do that because of the way that because of the name that they hold, so they can get away with that. So like a lot of Ivy League institutions, for example, tend not to pay for internships and things like that because you're getting the name for your service, if that makes sense. So it's great for people that live in the area, but not great for people that are coming from other places to try and get that like training and that research experience. So that's something that is going to have to change across the board, and hopefully, you know, it does at some point in time. So yeah, the application was relatively, I would say, simple. Very straightforward. You had to have like a statement of purpose, which I'll talk a little bit more about like towards the end of this, and how to create one that like stands out, especially if you don't have any research experience. So you're going to want to fall back on like other things rather than I was in this lab doing this thing with this person. There are other ways to work around that. And yeah, so I ended up actually at the National Institute on Aging in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was really through that experience that it sort of connected the dots for me to get to a lot of other places and to get to where I am right now. And I think that that's all it takes. It takes one experience and for you to meet one person for your whole entire trajectory of your career to change, hands down.
Like Starbucks on a Tuesday afternoon and then research in a lab for a year.
Exactly 100%. And people are like so blown away that that's how it's ended up. And like I'm like, guys, like it just takes one person giving you like a tiny piece of knowledge for you to be like, oh, okay, like I can do that. And then, you know, that triggers like a whole chain of reactions, and you never know, like 6 months from now you could be doing something insane. Like, and that's exactly how it happened. Like I was stumbling around on the internet and I found out that, you know, the government, and I applied on a whim. I submitted a subpar application, guys, because the window of time like that it was going to close was I think maybe I had like 4 days to complete it when I found it.
That's impressive because they also on their website about how acceptance is highest in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fill their spots.
I wasn't expecting, you know, like I was like, you know what, I'll apply, like I'll see what happens. I was doing a lot of that at the time. I'm like, I need to find something to do for the summer that's paid, like, you know, so I was just at this point applying to anything I could find. Like I didn't care where it was. Like I was like, as long as it's paid, like I'll go to Alabama if I need to, like type
give me research.
Exactly, please help me. You know, I was like throwing out SOS signals into the void. And surprisingly, ironically, guys, it's ironic that I meet all these people at Starbucks because I actually am a part-time Starbucks partner. So I didn't know that at the time. I worked at Starbucks prior to the whole ASU Starbucks partnership, which I can also talk about too at some point in time. But yeah, they pay 52% of my tuition and then reimburse me the other percent that I have to come out of my pocket. It's a fantastic deal if you're looking for school to be cheaper, but that's
This is the SCAP program?
Yeah. Yep. Fantastic. I have no complaints.
Can we book you for another guest speaking event on that?
Can do. Yeah, no, I can definitely give a ton of information if anybody's like interested in that. It's actually not that simple. I think you have to maintain like 200 or they changed. Well, it was 250 like per quarter, but I think they bumped it to like 580. But it's like in a long like period of time. They have an evaluation period, and then they evaluate you. They say you're eligible. And then it sort of kicks in. So like once you work 580 hours, like in this, I think you have like 9 months to do it or something like that. They evaluate twice per year. I think twice per year, maybe something like that. But it's very easy to stay eligible. I'm literally part-time and I'm fly by, you know, like it's not a big deal. Yeah. So I, you know, was working one day at Starbucks and I get this strange call on my phone. I'm like, what is this number? Like, I don't know a number. And it was the director of like the summer internship program in Baltimore, Maryland. And they were like, hey, like, do you have anything to do over the summer? We, you know, would love to bring you on. And like, at that point, they don't tell you what lab you're going to be in or anything like that. You're just, you know, a part of the like cohort that gets accepted. And it was interesting because the stat was that they only accepted, I think there were 30 of us maybe. So 60 people total, but half of us went to the National Institute on Aging. The other half went to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And yeah, they kind of were like, oh yeah, we had this many applicants and like you made the cut. We only accepted 30. There was like 500 applicants or something. I'm like, wow, like what on earth? Like what a random occurrence. But you know, it's like things like that, experiences like that you just never know. So if you think you're not qualified, which I, guys, was not qualified in any way, shape, or form.
And yet you were, because you got the position. I think the imposter syndrome is just like, it's too deep instead.
Yeah, it's deep rooted. It's 100% deep rooted because you're always, and I think it's especially bad for females in any type of STEM career because you're always trying to just check every box, you know? Yep. It's like, oh, if I can just do this one thing, or if I just wait 3 months, then I can check this box off. And like in reality, like there are so many people that are way, way, way less qualified than you, just like shooting their shot in the world and, you know, like getting opportunities and things like that simply because they're doing it. So that's a lot of also what this is about. It's a lot of just do it. And like, maybe it doesn't work out. And I have gotten really comfortable with the word no. I breathe the word no at this point. You know, there's been a lot of times that people are like, no thanks, like no, in various forms, some mean, some kind, like, you know, but you're gonna get rejected. And like, I think the sooner that you just sort of take that and sit with it and are just like, you know what, this is what my career is gonna feel like, you'll be so much happier, I would say. Like there's a lot of times, even in this whole PhD application process, like I did not get accepted to every single school I applied to. I got rejected from quite a few schools. Some hurt more than others. Others I was like, yeah, I kind of expected that, because again, I was just doing exactly what I told you to do. Shoot your shot, apply, you never know what could happen. And like, you know, maybe there's an 85% chance that they say no, but there's also that small chance that they could say yes. So that's been a lot of what I've been up to. And I went to the NIA and I had no idea what I was like so in over my head. Like we had this sort of, I would say like breakfast orientation thing. And they had this, I'll never forget this. They had this like PowerPoint slide up of where everybody came from, like the school they came from and their major. And I was sitting in a room with people that went to Stanford, with people that went to Yale, with people that went to Harvard. And I was like, are you guys sure I'm supposed to be here? Like,
me?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, like, and then, you know, the people are talking about, well, I have my first publication and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I have no research experience. I'm just here for that. Hi. You know, but I think like also allowing yourself to step into places like that definitely make you uncomfortable, because a solid, you know, it was 3 months of the summer and I was uncomfortable, I would say 75% of that experience. But I was so much better for it after the fact.
It's
so
only your first time the first time.
Oh my God.
You have that to go off of, and that's the only way that anybody gets experience, is just by doing things.
Exactly. And a lot of it too is, I will say, like, you don't have to be the best, like, you don't have to have the best grades, you don't have to be the best at science, you don't have to be the best at whatever it is that you're doing, but your work ethic is going to get you so much farther than your intellect ever will. You can be the smartest man on this planet, but if you don't work hard, people aren't going to want to work with you. And you experience that directly, especially in internships and things like that. When you're trying to get work experience, like, people just want to see that you want to do what you're there to do. So like, it's okay if you don't know absolutely everything, because I think that was something that I struggled with a lot too, going into these research experiences, is that most on-ground students have a better foundation than I would say us online students do, just because it's so hard to absorb all of that information. So my biology foundation was a lot weaker than people that had sat in class for, 8 hours or lab, or whatever the case may be. Like, I was definitely like, okay, I need to recall this. And a lot of it is going to be you having to sort of play catch up, or like fill in the holes in your education experience, because a lot of online school is you figuring it out. It's like, yeah, the teacher's giving you, this is what we're learning, this chapter, but science is changing so fast that what we're learning right now isn't even what's going on in the labs. It's like a step ahead of that. And the school systems, I think, are definitely, especially colleges, are going to be behind, just because every day there's something new. Like, I'm subscribed to a bunch of peer journals and things like that. And every day there's like a new this, new that, new this, new that. And you just can't, I think you should try and keep up with it, but I wouldn't get bogged down by trying to understand all these complex things, because your foundation is so much more important. You'll get to that point being able to understand single cell RNA-seq and what that means for science, if you know what RNA does in the body, so it's like,
you're given the book, and you have to bridge the gap yourself. You got to be a go-getter and find
absolutely
it.
So it's why
in your education at the time that you did the summer internship program, how far were you in the degree progress?
So let's see, I'm basically a senior now, so I should have graduated in December, actually. So I was basically a senior at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
And they don't just take seniors, it's everyone from high school to, so you have high school students all the way to like 1 year after graduation. So it's a big window of people that they accept into this program. And I'll talk a little bit too about not only summer internship programs, but post-bac programs, which are post-bachelor's degree programs, that if you feel like you're not ready to go into a PhD or a master's program, there is that program that a lot of universities have, and they love when people want to go to them, because a lot of people want to just like skip over that portion and like jump straight to PhD. They're usually paid, and they also sort of they're kind of like a bridge into said university, because they like to take people that have done their post-bac programs and admit them into their PhD programs or their master's programs, because they know that you got that foundational like research experience from their university. So they're more likely to like pick you up on the back end, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like not like a cheating way into, but like it's definitely a road you can take if you feel like I need to make money, because that's critical. When people graduate, people have to pay back student loans, and like that's totally that's like a normal thing to have to do. So that's a way to like make money instead of just going out and like being like, okay, give me the quickest job I can find.
Yeah, I have a bachelor's in STEM, and now I need to work minimum wage in order to pay for it.
Exact, 100%.
Yeah, which also then can be problematic if you are trying to go on for further education and you have this massive gap.
Yeah. Because they want you to explain the gap, and they also want you to explain the gap in a way that's like, if you take a gap, it's so important that whatever you're doing during that gap is enriching your educational experience, whatever it is. Like if you're trying to go to med school and you take a gap in between to study for the MCAT and apply, they don't want to see that you're just studying for the MCAT. They want to see that you're doing something else, like you're enriching your mind in some other way, rather than I took, a year off to strictly study for the MCAT.
Right.
And
you're going to be with applicants who studied for the MCAT and finished their degree, or studied for the MCAT and did research, and that's who you're competing against.
Well, it's the same thing for PhD programs. That's why it's so hard to get into med school and so hard to get into PhD programs, because you can apply at any stage of your life. So for me, going into the applicant pool, I am fresh out of my bachelor's degree. Like, I do have a ton of research experience, but that was relatively recently. Like, I got all of my research experience within my junior and senior year. So I didn't have 4 years of research experience. I had one academic year, a summer, and now I will have another full academic year. When I was applying, I only had one academic year and a summer internship. So that's sort of on the lighter end. A lot of schools are like, oh, we want to see 2 years. And I'm like, 2 years? Like, it's hard enough to actually complete the degree, let alone like spend all my time doing summer internships and not having a life and things like that. So I think they're moving away from that approach. Like, I want to see that you have research experience, and they're more looking at applicants in a holistic view, which is a lot of the way that med school is doing it as well too. It's not just your MCAT score and your GPA. It's like, how are you as a whole person?
Like a quality over quantity type of thing?
Oh,
like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because I mean, even in PhD programs, they're moving away from the GRE. I think I only submitted my GRE, which I'm very upset I paid for, because I paid for that. And the application cycle updated and everything was new, for fall 2020. And they were like, not accepting the PhD, not accepting the GRE, not accepting the GRE. We don't need the GRE. And I was like, I spent so much money and so much time on this. Yeah. So check the schools that you're going to apply to, email them. They are always looking to like answer questions for potential applicants and things like that. So ask them if they're going to accept it. Don't waste your money like I did. Don't waste your time studying for a test that might not even be relevant when you apply. That's my PSA for this whole thing.
Over the summer, I did the organic chemistry labs. I was on campus for a week, and I was talking to pretty much any professor I could. Yeah. I talked to a couple of them in the hallway as they were coming back for lunch. I had zero shame, but I got some good advice. And one of them was specific about the GRE. And he said, a lot of programs don't need it and they don't look at it. However, he said, if the program lists it, even if it lists it as optional, you should submit it, because professors are using it as a way of saying, will you rise to the expectation, even though you know it's pointless? So yep. that was his advice there.
There were some that I submitted it for, and then others that I was like, I'm not doing this, because at that point I'd already taken it. It's good for 5 years. Like, great. I wouldn't stress about it. There are plenty of programs, plenty of top tier PhD programs that don't even want to look at it.
They don't even want you to submit.
They don't even care. Yeah, they're like, don't even waste my time because I'm not going to look at it. And that's a lot of what I found out over the summer when I was at the NIA, is not only is this experience one where you're working for the government and you have these great mentors and things like that, they require you to attend things like journal clubs and these talks and roundtables and things like that, so you're getting the whole PhD experience before you're actually in the PhD program. And a lot of the people that I was in my cohort with were applying to med school, but it's still a good experience because you're sort of getting a view at how science actually works, like in the real world. So what I worked on there actually was I looked at identifying molecular markers for human skeletal muscle aging. So a lot of the issue, or what my lab was particularly interested in, was understanding age-related muscular degenerative diseases. So things like sarcopenia, muscle dystrophy, muscle atrophy, things like that. And we wanted to sort of come up with a way to measure or diagnose these conditions, because you can Google it right now. It's still not a thing. there's really no cohesive way across the board to diagnose someone with like sarcopenia or muscle atrophy or things like that. There's no criteria to go off of, or there's no measurement like protocol. A lot of it gets chalked up to this person's old, they can't walk, and you're like, okay, but like, is it normal? Yeah, like exactly, like we have to normalize this. Like, is this type of muscle loss at 55 normal? And there was no way to sort of figure that out. So I spent my summer trying to, at the molecular level, find markers that pop up throughout age that we'd be able to look at and say, okay, at 25 years old, you should be seeing this muscle fiber and this specific myosin, which, if you don't know, your muscles are made up of myosin and actin, and when they slide, your muscles contract. So we were looking at those the myosin that encode for different muscle fibers, which change as you age, and we were trying to sort of tease out a way to, is there some correlation between what's being expressed and how old you are?
So
and we actually did find.
Sorry, you were trying to look for the normal curve to then look to mark deviations from.
Essentially, yeah. So we were first we were just trying to see over someone's lifespan what's going to show up, like what are potential markers that we could find, and we basically, they're the same thing. So I looked at different isoforms, which are exactly what you think they are. Same thing in chemistry. They are literally the same thing in different form. So I looked at different isoforms of like specific myosin that encode muscle fiber. And you obviously have fast twitch, slow twitch muscle fibers, which people know of. People don't often know that you actually have embryonic and neonatal muscle fibers, which are only supposed to be present when you're a baby, young, developing. But as you age, as people age, we saw these developmental myosins being expressed again, which should only happen in the case of injury. So if you hurt yourself, you're obviously going to see those again because your muscle's trying to regenerate itself. But we were seeing that a lot in elderly people above the age of 65. So that calls into question, are there what's happening? Like, is this normal? Is this cause for concern? Why are their muscles showing these signs? And we ended up sort of coming to a conclusion, and it's just a hypothesis at this point. It's like, we think that what's happening is that your muscle fibers know when they're in this developmental state, they're either embryonic or neonatal, and they know what fiber they're supposed to switch to. So there's like a mechanism where embryonic muscle fiber goes to like an adult fiber, whether it be fast twitch or slow twitch, and that mechanism is sort of getting stuck. It's like a light switch, but the light's not coming on. So it doesn't know what it's supposed to be. So it's stuck in this developmental phase, and it's just not as strong. It's not as resilient. So then that's why you're seeing that decline in muscle function as people age.
Wow.
Yeah. So I spent some time doing that, and I really got to know the people in my lab, and they were super helpful. People are so willing to help you if you ask for help. I would like to think that most people are like that. You maybe meet like a few people in the world that probably aren't like that, but I would say like 85% of people, maybe even more, want to help you if you ask them. So a lot of what I was doing was like a ton of networking, and I cannot stress enough how important networking actually is. In any portion of your life, whether it be STEM or personal or whatever, you never know who's going to know someone that might be able to help you. And that's how I ended up at Harvard. Q.
Yeah. Wait, could we go into that some more though?
Yeah. So I actually, her name is Dr. Jennifer O'Connell, and she actually works at the Laboratory and Clinical Investigation at the NIA, and I wasn't working directly with her, but I was in that lab. And she is, honest to God, just an angel. She's so nice. She is actually very accomplished and very young cell biologist. She works for the NIH. I'm trying to think where she went to school. I think she went to UConn, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, through her, I was just kind of talking, and I'm like, hey, like, I'm, going back to Boston at the end of the summer. Like, I'm really looking for something to do. And she's like, let me reach out to people that I know and I'll get back to you. And I was like, okay, like, cool. Like, maybe she'll find something for me, like, whatever. So she gets back to me a few days later and is like, hey, like, I just contacted someone that I did my postdoc with. So this person, she ended up contacting her, and she contacted somebody else. Wow. So this was like a chain of 3 people. It was like Dr. O'Connell reaching out to someone that she went to school with or did her postdoc with maybe 10 years ago. And then that person was like, oh, I can't take her in my lab, but let me reach out to somebody else. So that's the key. Like, that is the key to networking, and that's how it will work for you, because my opportunity didn't stop at the one person. That person reached out to someone else because they fell back on the fact that she said that I was a good person. So it's hearsay at this point, if she says I'm a good worker and, I'm smart and like all of these things, someone else will believe that and they will pass that along. And that's exactly what happened. Is like, she got back to me and she was like, oh, Sarah didn't have a spot for you, but Sarah reached out to someone that she went to school with in Australia. Weirdest scenario, but is also in the Boston area doing research. And I was like, great, like, cool, maybe something will come of this, maybe it won't. And then I got an email from someone named Alice, and I was like, okay, like, I don't know who Alice is, like, whatever. She was like, oh, like, we're definitely looking for people in the lab. Like, there's an agreement at Harvard that you have to either be getting credit for like your time in the lab, or they have to be paying you. I opted for the credit, so I don't have to take any upper division electives, which I'll talk more about, like what class that is and things like that. So yeah, I ended up getting an opportunity to go to this lab that I knew nothing about. And I wasn't even set on doing aging at that point, but through my experience over the summer, I started doing like some outside research and things like that. And I was like, oh, aging's pretty cool. Like, definitely want to continue that. And so that's how I ended up in an aging lab at Harvard Medical School. Someone told someone who found someone, and then they were like, interview. I interviewed, and I was completely honest the whole entire time. I was like, yeah, like, I don't really know much about what you guys do. Don't recommend doing that. But if it was sort of like a snowball, and it happened quite quickly. And I ended up in a lab of Dr. David Sinclair, and you can Google his name. He has a ton of patents. He's very famous. And I had no idea who this guy was, guys. When I went there, I was like, oh my God, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was just young and, I'm like, I just want to be a scientist. And it's been a really great experience. It's very, very, very challenging. But I've been in the lab for 5 months now. These were like back-to-back experiences too. Like, I went to the NIH in May. I got done in August, like literally end of August, I was at Harvard. And I've been there since, and I'll be there probably until May when I graduate. And so what we're doing right there is what we're doing at Harvard is his lab is solely focused on understanding why we age and what we can do to reverse the process. And I can like link more things about him and stuff like that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
He's a really cool guy. Yeah, he's a super cool guy. He actually has a lab in Australia as well, in Sydney. So he bounces back and forth. So I rarely see him, but when I do see him, there's usually a camera in front of his face. I've seen some really interesting people come through the lab. Like, he was on Good Morning America. Like, he's going to be on, what is Into the Wormhole or something like that with like Morgan Freeman. I'm like, what is going on?
But do you get to meet Morgan Freeman?
Listen, we have to sign non-disclosure agreements. Like, when we get in there. It was so weird. They like laid it in front of me and they were like, you can't say anything about anything that's going on here. So I can't go into too much detail about what happens in the lab, but definitely the project that I'm focused on right now, well, I'm sort of part of two projects. The NASA project, which investigates like radiation, the effects of radiation on your DNA and what that does to the epigenetic landscape. And in human terms, not science terms, basically, what does radiation do to your DNA and how does that accelerate aging? And so right now I'm doing a lot of like molecular cloning, something I never thought I would be doing at all. I definitely kind of fell more on the molecular or the microbiology side is more, because you can like, it's tangible, you can see it. A lot of what I do with molecular and cellular biology is purely abstract and theoretical, very tiny. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of hard to like grasp concepts. So I'm doing a lot of cloning in yeast and things like that. We're taking genes that are native to one species. So the species of radiodurans, which is like a bacteria, and we're taking that and we're essentially taking it out of the genome and we're inputting it into a yeast genome. Yeast are great to study because you can sort of model lifespan. Pretty similar to humans. They have the same like replicative lifespan, or it's comparable, not the same, I would say. But you know, you can't do it with humans. It would take far too long. But with yeast, you can.
It might be like an ethical issue too. I'm not, I'm just like gonna go there and just pull out the DNA.
No, I like to joke. I'm like, yeah, we could do it with humans, but it would just take far too long. No, yeah, that's a huge thing. So yeast is better because it's yeast. No one cares about that. It's like bread. That's it. Yeah, the lab smells like bread frequently and beer. We grow them in big vats. It's like the tubes are like this large. It's insane. It smells awful, folks. Do not recommend.
Yay, science!
Yeah. When you tell people that you work with yeast, they're kind of like, eh. I'm like, it's cooler than it sounds, I promise. Like, so yeah, we're integrating those genes into the yeast genome, and we're trying to see whether or not we can extend yeast lifespan. And if we can, how do we apply that to people that go out in space and suffer these DNA double-stranded breaks, which accelerate aging? That's been proven. So yeah, a lot of what I'm doing there is that. And then the other projects that we work on there's a few muscle projects. So we're also working on a high limb suspension project, which it sounds unethical, but it's not. It's totally. So we take mice and you raise them up so they only have access to their front paws to induce muscle atrophy. So they disuse, obviously. They can still move their legs, but they're not touching the ground, so there's no pressure.
It's not weight bearing.
Exactly, no weight bearing, just like it would be in space. And then we do that for 2 weeks, induce muscle atrophy, and then we sort of attempt to rehabilitate them. But we're treating them with drugs that have been tested and proven to accelerate muscle proliferation, and so to help them regain function faster. And these are naturally occurring drugs, folks, molecules that you can get outside. So they're not designed in a lab in any way, shape, or form. They just discovered that these had like regenerative properties. So we're using those. And I would like to tell you what they are, but I cannot. But so yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Yeah, it's been challenging.
It's very cool. Can I ask, so you find yourself in this position, you have landed an interview based on the word of a word from somebody for the program that you landed because of your year of working on zebrafish because of the fateful Starbucks trip, which is amazing, if I'm tracking this correctly.
Boom. Yeah.
So you're here. You have a year of experience of working in the lab in Puget Sound, and then your intense summer with the MBA.
Yeah.
The skills that you're using now, does this primarily come from your research experience over that year and a half? Or do you find that you're using your degree knowledge?
So this is the funny part. I actually find myself doing a lot of Googling as opposed to using my degree knowledge. No, I will say that, like I said, the foundation is very, very, very important, but a lot of the concepts that come out of this lab, especially the one at Harvard, where there's this level of like having to come up with novel approaches to solving problems. You can't learn that in a textbook. Like, you can't learn how to problem solve and how to innovate through a textbook. You can only achieve that foundational knowledge that's going to help you sort of tease out the mechanisms behind whatever it is that you're trying to solve. So I find myself a lot of the time going back to that foundational knowledge that's like, okay, why do we care about mitochondria? What can mitochondria do for us? And then sort of piggybacking off of that and seeing like, okay, can I connect the dots in a way that makes sense? Definitely a lot of what I think has helped me the most is just being around people that know more than me. Yeah. Like, in every situation that I've been in, no matter how many times no matter, you know, what grade I'm in, there's still someone ahead of me that knows so much more than I do. And it is super critical that when you're in the presence of people like that, that you're probing them for information, or, you know, whether it be like actual knowledge or like how they approach a problem. Because I have noticed that there are people that I work with in the lab, and they are all brilliant individuals, but they approach problems in a different way, and like coming together. And that's why labs work so well together, is that you have all of these approaches, and you go and you sit down at a lab meeting and you say, this is my project. And that's a very scary thing, to put your whole entire, you know, a project in front of people and have them pick it apart. But I think so much of what like I've learned and what other people learn and how you continue to learn is having people look at your project in a different light. So, I mean, your college degree does come into it, and like my other experiences have sort of helped me get comfortable in that environment. But I think, in all honesty, in every situation, they've just been very different labs. And I think that that'll be the same case, like in my PhD, like who knows what lab I'll be into, or get into at that point.
Okay. So if you had to pick something out, do you think it's your just like immersion in the lab that has taught you the most, like as far as like the mentality and the approach to take and all that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I don't think you can talk about it all day long, but I think you have to be drowning in order to, you know, learn anything. And that's a lot of what all of my experiences have been, as me going in and feeling like, why am I here? I feel like I don't know anything that these people know. Like, I have a notebook that sits here constantly, guys. It is full of things I don't know, you know, and it's not one of those things. It's not one of those situations where I feel like I need to know it all, but I definitely do take notes and things like that. And I'm like, oh, I'll check that out later. Or, you know, I think that you can get sort of bogged down if you go into an experience and you're like, oh, I don't know everything. I don't think anybody knows everything. Like, I would argue that a lot of people know nothing in the grand scheme of science. So yeah, definitely just being like thrown into a situation teaches you the most, I think, for sure.
Or something that you wish you had known going into that first research experience, like if you, in hindsight, you know?
Man, I wish I would have known that like every experience is going to be so different, you know, because I went into that first experience and I was just so eager and I was like, this is great. And then I went to the next experience at the NIA and working for the government, and like, first of all, academia and the government, two very different things. So that was like two very different experiences in a relatively short period of time. So like my whole, I don't know, there for a second, I was like, do I give up science? Like, am I on the same level as these people? So yeah, I wish I would have known earlier that it's totally normal to feel like that. And there are people that go that are like 5th-year PhD students that walk into seminars and they have no idea what's going on. And like, that's totally acceptable. I think the key is going. 100% just going. And if the only thing that you get out of it is that you went, well, that's better than not, you know?
You can
like,
still put that on a resume.
Exactly. I went, I did that thing. And through those experiences, like at the NIA and at Harvard, I mentioned that I've been to a bunch of like conferences and things like that. If you have an opportunity to go to a conference, whether you're presenting or just strictly observing, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. I went to ABRCAMS, which is the annual biomedical research conference for minority students, and I can give anybody the information for that. It's not just for minority students. Let me just start with that. But it is definitely geared towards minority students or underrepresented individuals in STEM fields. And that was a phenomenal experience. And I met so many cool people, and the way that it is set up, it is honestly, I think that had I not gone, I definitely wouldn't be in the position that I am today with as many PhD interviews that I have and as much background knowledge, because that's what the whole entire experience is. 4 days. And whether you can present a poster or you can talk, and it's usually if you've done research for the prior like year. If you haven't, I definitely just recommend going. I think next year, or this year, 2020, is in San Antonio. So if anybody's in that area, they also have like a travel grant. So if you can't afford to like pay for traveling there, you can apply for the grant and you can apply to like go and things like that. So it's a really cool experience. And I met so many cool people that I don't think I ever would have. And my LinkedIn network is massive now, which I will talk to you guys about very soon. And everybody that is on this and everybody that is in ideas should definitely follow each other, drop your LinkedIn on a chain, because that's going to help you a ton as well, because you never know who someone knows. And if you're part of that person's LinkedIn network, then it makes it easier for you to reach out to people that maybe you wouldn't have a connection with. So if like I know someone at Harvard, for example, in my lab, and you 2 years from now are applying to Harvard for your PhD program, it's better for you to have me in your LinkedIn network, because they will look you up on LinkedIn. I promise you they will. And they like to see that you know people, or that you're putting effort into this, like reaching out, creating
build your community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't have a link, I mean, I was very surprised when I was walking around at some of these conferences and people are like handing out like actual cards. I'm like, don't you just have a LinkedIn? Like, why are you handing out business cards? Yeah, so I mean, as far as like path to PhD is concerned, things that make people uncomfortable, I think, about the process are asking for letters of recommendation. Super hard for online students, I would say. It's incredibly hard for I would say anybody, because it's such a strange position to be in, to be sort of like asking someone to do a favor for you, and all you've done is like maybe get a B in their class, you're like, So for online students, I've had a great experience, especially at ASU, getting letters of recommendation. Dr. Austin was actually one of my letters of rec, and she was amazingly helpful. I was super nervous to ask her, but things that help when you're looking for letters of rec: have an updated CV or a resume or whatever, and create a statement of purpose, maybe not the one that's going to the school that you're interested in applying to, but just like a statement that can go to those professors that say, hi, my name is so-and-so. This is what I see myself doing in 5 years, or whatever the case may be, because they don't know your story, especially if you're an online student. It's definitely harder to, I would say, like connect on a personal level with people. And don't feel bad about reaching out and asking someone to help you, because like I said, they will probably 100% help you, but do it in a way that is like nice, not just, hey, I need you to do this for me. Mm-hmm. Like when I prompted all the professors that I prompted at ASU, it was like, hi, like my name is so-and-so, like my name's Bri. I took your class XYZ, because some of the people I asked for letters of rec, I'd taken their classes like maybe a semester or two ago. They teach a lot of people, so they're not just gonna know who you are right off the bat. And then I started with, I'm looking to apply to PhD programs in this. This is briefly my goal. Would you mind writing a letter of rec for me? As an online student, it's quite difficult to get those to apply. Most people understand that. And then at the bottom, I just say I've attached my like resume, CV. Like if you need any more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And it went over well every single time. Like I've never received a no from someone for writing a letter of rec. So that's definitely, and that goes for med school too, things like that. These professors want to see you do stuff with your life. Like, and that's part of their job as a professor, is to write letters of recommendation, to connect with students or whatever, answer your questions. Like, so don't ever feel like you can't reach out to someone to do that.
They also have all been in our position. They all needed letters of rec to get to the point.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah. Actually, though, I felt so I applied to 9 grad schools. That's a lot of letters of rec, guys. Poor Dr. Austin. Like, she had to, she probably didn't write the same letter didn't write 9 different letters, but she had to submit that letter 9 times. And every single time I was like, thank you so much. Like, this is super helpful. I definitely bribed them slightly after the fact, guys. I definitely got them a gift card to Starbucks. I was like, you guys are great. Thank you so much. But no, like, you don't have to go that far. But like, it was just definitely, I know how much of a burden it is, because like, not only are you doing your actual day job, you're also doing a night job for me. So yeah, just being like considerate, and definitely being efficient in your email. So like, when are these letters of rec due? Like, I also put that in my email. Like, this is the deadline. The deadline is in red. Like, I coded it in red, this is the last possible day you can set it. And like, don't feel bad about saying, either reminding them if you don't hear back from them. Most of the time they probably need that reminder, like, hey, just checking in, like, not trying to rush you or anything. Hopefully, are you
still good for this?
Yeah. Are you still good? Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also something that people don't think about, have some fallback letters ready, guys. Fallback people, just in case someone drops the ball, which is totally plausible, and it doesn't mean that they didn't want to write it or whatever the case may be. Someone maybe just forgot, but like, have people in your arsenal that you can like last minute if you need a letter of rec. I have a few people like that I'm like, hey, like, I need this ASAP, and they have it for me like as quickly as I need it,
Particularly because ASU is a research university, and so many of our professors are actively involved in their own research in addition to teaching.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, and I like I said, I haven't had any like terrible experience. Also, another thing that I will tell you is like super important that people don't tell you is important is how you lay out your CV is very important. And I've learned that just from being at Harvard. We have like kind of this co-working space. So like, our lab manager is constantly evaluating people's resumes and CVs and things. And they do pay attention to it. They pay attention to how it's laid out. They pay attention to the wording that they use, that you use, and they pay attention to what you're including in your CV or in your resume. And if you need feedback on that, I am 100% always available to read CVs and resumes. I might not know what the heck you're talking about if you're not in STEM, but I can definitely grammar check you, format, or anything like that. So at the end of this, like, yeah, I can always put my email and things like that. And ASU actually does have a resource, and I'll link it. I'll send you all the links that I have.
Perfect.
I have a whole place that you can submit your resume and things like that to get it formatted and check. And I've done that multiple times, and it's worked out great for me. I don't have any complaints.
I'm pretty sure that Pre-Health Advising also does their own version of that specific to,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think, another thing that has come up that's like pretty important is, I don't know who's taking the GRE or the MCAT or anything like that. ASU does have a free test prep
The
service.
Princeton Review.
Yes, take advantage of it. I did. All you literally have to do is you sign up, they call you, they ask you, what your career plan is. You give them a little rundown. They send you a link so you can make your profile and you have access to it. And I think you have to submit your score within a year.
Yeah.
So, which is very easy to do because when you take the GRE, fun fact, please, please, please have your schools ready with the codes. Take it with you to the testing site. They give you, I think they'll let you send your score to 5 schools for free. Outside of that, it's $30 every single time you send a score.
So that played into when you decided whether or not to send scores to. Yeah.
It sure did, because I was not prepared. I went and took my GRE. I cried right before I did it. It was pouring down rain. It was freezing. I had no idea where I was going. I couldn't find the building. I was almost late. I was soaked, had to take the GRE, and was just like not prepared at all. I ended up scoring fine, guys, but I was definitely not in the best like mental state. So I wasn't like prepared to like get the school codes or anything like that. So once you submit off that screen and it's gone, you have to pay for it every single time.
And so you missed your 5 free.
30, yeah. So that's $30 out of your pocket every single time. And that's not including some schools will require official transcripts. So that's also a hidden cost that people don't tell you about. So sending your scores for GRE is a hidden cost. Sending your transcripts, because some schools require that they're official transcripts and not just PDFs of an unofficial. So look for that when you're applying to schools. I wish I would have seen that before I started my application. At that point, I was in too deep. I'm like, I've already decided I have to pay for it. So I spent a lot of unnecessary money when I didn't have to. If someone would have just told me like, oh, these are things to look for.
You could have at the very least planned differently for it financially.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
Also, colleges, PhD programs. I don't know about the MCAT because I'm not going to med school, but I can definitely tell you PhD programs have fee waivers. Do not let those people tell you they don't have fee waivers, because they do. So if you're interested in applying to any of those programs, when I said I went to Abercams, that actual conference they have like a, I would say like what they have their like med schools and PhD programs and stuff, and they do sort of like a convention seminar thing. You can just like go through and like pop to like every single table and kind of see. And they are handing those things out like candy. You don't have to be special to get a fee waiver. You just have to have a good reason to get a fee waiver.
So it's like validating parking.
Absolutely. Like, and I didn't think that. I was like, oh, I don't qualify for a fee waiver. You qualify for a fee waiver. You're applying to grad school. You're a broke college kid. Tell them that. Like, embrace that. Because I got so many fee waivers for schools that I just wasn't going to apply to because I couldn't afford to apply to that many schools. I went from applying to 4 PhD programs to applying to 9 because I got 5 fee waivers.
That's massive.
From this conference. And it's relatively easy. Like, if you have time, shoot them an email. Sometimes sometimes they have a link for it if you want a fee waiver. You have to do kind of like a roundabout thing. You might have to fill out a form that's like, how much money do you make? Or things like that. But most of the time, if there's more than one person in your household going to college, if you make under a certain amount of money, if you are by yourself, if you're in the military, if you're a female, if you're African American, if you're Latino, like there is a bracket that you will fit in that you can get a fee waiver.
You just have to find it.
Oh yeah, and like if they don't have it on their website, reach out to their program director and explain your situation. Be like, I'm interested in applying to your program, but these are my circumstances. Exactly. And 9 times out of 10, they'll give you a fee waiver, or they'll give you the link to apply to get a fee waiver.
They're invested in multiple candidates being able to apply because it boosts the program.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of schools have this like big push for diversity and things like that. And that will play to your advantage as an online student, 100%, because you are diverse just for attending school online, because most people cannot do this. They just can't. And that's the reality of it. And that's why I say leveraging your entire ability as an online student is so critical. And when you write your personal statement and when you're applying for these like higher education or internships or whatever the case may be, like, don't think that being an online student puts you at a disadvantage, because it doesn't, because you've learned skills that kids that just go to school don't have. They don't.
Self-efficacy, time management,
Exactly, 100%. And all of those things, regardless of if you have lab experience or if you don't have lab experience, are critical things that companies or schools or anything like that, they look for in applicants, because it's not enough to just be a good student anymore. It's 100% not enough to do that. You can make your case simply on the fact that I am an online student. These are all the things that I've had to overcome, like adversity. I guarantee you, if I went across the board and asked everyone, what is an adverse situation that you've had to overcome from being an online student, you could name something 100%, whether it be that you're military, whether it be that you pay for college out of your pocket, whether it be, that you're returning to school, or whatever the case may be. There's some sort of situation that you can leverage in when you're applying to these schools that make you look like the perfect candidate, instead of some kid that's like, oh yeah, I'm fresh out, I was part of this club, I got dean's list, I did this, I did that, I have this publication, I have 4 patents. Like, that's great, but where's your life experience? You don't have any.
Or where's your experience with your work-life balance?
100%. Or have you ever failed at anything in your life? Anything at all?
Yeah. Because
I have run into people that have never failed before, and they get told no, and it's detrimental to their, self-esteem, their self-worth, like everything. There are people that, I actually met a girl when I went to BioSci Southwest, which is put on by Arizona. And I think they're trying to do it now twice every semester. So keep an eye out for that. If you ever want to go, I do believe they also have travel grants. But yeah, I ran into a girl and she was like, I got told no for med school. And like, she just completely gave up her dream to go to med school. And I'm like, why would you do that? But she was in a situation like that where she had just kind of coasted right through and never experienced, any type of adversity. And I think that, like I said, being comfortable with being told no and really laying that out on the table, I was 100% very clear in all of my statements of purpose that this is the background that I came from. This is why I would be a good candidate. Mm-hmm. And I went.
And also, this is how it makes me a better student.
Absolutely.
From it.
Absolutely. In my statement of purpose, I have told universities, because you have to send all your transcripts, and I'm not. One of my transcripts from one of the schools I went to is not too hot, guys. Like, I'm telling you, I was borderline, like, I was on academic probation, which, a 2.0 at some universities is academic probation, but I was on academic probation, and I laid that out 100%. And I was like, this does not define me as a student. And you can see that from my record at ASU, that is not a direct reflection of the student that I am. And that's not the direct reflection of the person that I plan to be at your institution. So, so take those experiences and those hardships that you have and tweak it to make yourself look more like resilient, because you are. Like, if you're even applying to a higher education program, pat yourself on the back, because a lot of people don't do that. Like, and I think that we're not taught in school to appreciate those, like, critical, times where it's just another step in the process, but you don't really stop to think, oh man, like, if you look behind you, like, that's 4 years of education you just completed. Like, round of applause for yourself. Like, a lot of people don't do that because your goals are so high that you're still looking this direction, and you've yet to turn around and be like, man, like,
Well,
look where I've come from.
so much of it overlaps. Like, you're supposed to do the GRE while you're still in your degree. You're supposed to get undergraduate research before you even graduated, because by the time you graduate, if you don't have it, you're already behind. And it's just
Exactly.
and even trying to figure out how to stack it and when to stack it, and also the fact that it's not one order fits all.
No.
It doesn't have to be that way, and yet most of like the first level of when you're applying to things, they really present it that way.
No, yeah, and that's not the case at all. There are people that have no research experience that get into PhD programs because of how they present themselves as an applicant. And I think I 1000%. Someone asked me a question. Sorry, I 1000%. Sorry,
I was waiting for a good time to ask you.
Yeah, so I definitely think like there are people that have done it in different ways, or there are people who have done none of it there, but I think it's all about how you're gonna phrase it. Mm-hmm. And you have to be a really good storyteller, and that is the critical part of writing a statement of purpose, is being a good storyteller, and telling your story in a way that makes those universities want you to come there, because they are looking for diverse candidates, and diversity isn't just color of your skin or what gender you are. It's everyone's life story. Like, that is diversity at its core. And my story is 1000% different than your story. And we're both diverse candidates. Like,
right.
So it's like, how do I, you have to figure out a way to tell your story. And a lot of the help that I've gotten is from my advisor, is from those mentors that have been in my life. And I definitely think if you don't have a mentor, get a mentor. Jesus. And then that might just take sending an email to someone being like, hey, do you have a second? I'd love to ask you some questions. You're doing a job that I want to do.
Yeah.
And you never know.
Even at a base level during the degree program is going to office hours. You can ask professors similar questions, just as a way to get comfortable with having that kind of conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as far as the question is concerned, the question is, have you met or know parents who work at labs and how they balance between their careers or internships and life's responsibilities, and do they work full time? So I actually work in a lab with, they actually just moved to University of Rhode Island. So I don't know if anybody's interested in that, but they have a lab. They just opened a lab in at University of Rhode Island, and they have a 3-year-old son. They are both postdocs, so they are both at the same stage in their career with a son. And I do believe, first of all, childcare is, like, oh my gosh, I see the price of that and it makes me want to cry for you.
Do they offer student loans for childcare?
So but you have to, I would look at some universities, because I know at the NIH, they are starting to open up programs, so you can have your kid in childcare while you're trying to finish your degree or trying to do whatever it is that you're doing. And I know there are some progressive universities that are also doing the same thing. And I feel like I read something about ASU trying to do something like that, where they have like a scholarship available for like childcare for full-time students working on their degree. And I know Harvard also does. But yeah, they were in the lab, and I do believe their son was in daycare for part of the time, and they sort of alternated their time. So like one of them would be in the morning and like doing research and things like that. The other one would be at home with their son, and then they would swap. But that's if you're lucky, and if you're in a research lab that, works with that. My PI is actually incredibly helpful with things like that, because there's another, he's actually a graduate student. He just graduated officially. He defends his thesis like in a couple months or something like that. He had a son. His son is like 10 months old during the program. It's definitely, I will say, a lot easier for guys. I don't think that PhD programs are there yet as far as women, and that's been a question that has been posed, and I think it's at the forefront of a lot of the decision making that universities are trying to do, is how do we keep women in STEM or keep women in the medical field but also allow them to have a family life.
And are you speaking in terms of support during pregnancy and maternity leave?
All of the above, paternity leave, all of it. I think it's not good enough. Like 100%, I think it's not good enough. It's hard. You have to make that decision. Like, for example, my husband and I, we have no kids. My husband is an aerospace engineer. So he also works in a lab. I work in a lab. We are never home. Like, I am gone. He's gone probably at like 6:30 in the morning, and he gets home maybe at like 4 or 5 o'clock, and I'm gone from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Depends on the day, depends on what's going on. So I will say research is a hard one as far as schedule is concerned, because they expect you to be there around the clock. It's like, oh, you got to be doing all of the things. And I just think that that's kind of a toxic mentality, and hopefully like it will stop doing that. But a lot of people that do have kids in our lab, they are there part-time right now. But I think that depending on what stage you're at in your career, a lot of your PhD. So for example, some PhD programs only require you to take classes for your first year. So you're only super obligated to be in places at hard deadlines for your first year. And then after that, you sort of moved into like your personal schedule, and it's more like, how are you going to space your experiments and things like that so that it works for you? So then you do a lot of the designing yourself. So if I don't want to do experiments till midnight, I don't have to do experiments till midnight. And like I said, I'm pretty type A. I plan pretty much everything in my life. So I think the balance for PhD programs is definitely a lot better than for like med school. If you choose to do all your work, some people I know don't even come into the lab till like 10:30 a.m. I'm like, I'd rather come in at 6:30 and leave at 3. Like, I'm not coming in at 10:30 and leaving at 7. Like, no, thank you. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all about how you want to. I think you have to get through that 1 year, and that's something you can ask when you go to interviews. Is ask these people, ask the committees what they're doing. Hold them accountable 100%. Like, if you have a question that you want answered and it's an uncomfortable question, too bad. There's a section of the interview that's 100% for you to ask them questions. And so probe them, ask them, what are the benefits? Like, do you give benefits for people with kids? Like, what does your university do? How are you going to help me? Yeah. I'm supposed to be helping you. You want me to come here to do my PhD and get you publications and money and all this stuff. What are you going to do for me? And I think that's perfectly acceptable to ask in any interview process, whether it be a job, whether it be med school, whether it be PhD, master's programs, all of it. Ask the question. And I think it's 100% dependent on your PI as well. So your principal investigator, like I said, mine's very flexible. So asking those questions before you lock yourself into a lab is definitely very, very, very important. So if there's something that you like, whether it be I have kids or, my religion says I need to be somewhere at this point in time, like making sure you're communicating that clearly with your PI is going to be super helpful as well.
And I would imagine too that it's to see how it's received before you're in the dynamic.
Before you sign on the dotted line, because like that's easy enough, if someone's not willing to work with you on that, you don't have to work with them. And that's the best part about being able to choose what lab you want to be in, is you can sort of dip your toes into a lot of different areas and say, okay, I like this research, but do I like this person? Like, can I deal with this person for 6 years? Because this is my life plan and this is what I want to do. And I don't think you should have to compromise in your life. Like, and most people are, I would say, willing. You get those old PIs that are like, have been around for, 70 years and they're like, everybody lives in the lab. Well, not me, sorry. But no, everybody that I work with is pretty flexible. If someone has like a doctor's appointment or they have to leave or whatever, it's mostly communicated via, we work a lot on Outlook. So we're just keeping everybody in the loop. Like, communication is definitely.
Sounds like you have a very good team dynamic where you're working.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some people that work better than others in a team, you know how that goes, but for the most part, everybody's fairly supportive, and we got along well as a lab. I don't know how other labs are. I know the Department of Genetics is fairly friendly. And that's something that you also want to look into when you're choosing like a PhD program, is how does the department interact with other departments? Because a lot of science is collaboration. And if you're going into a program that has this like toxic environment, you're not going to get a lot done. And that's not going to be great for your career, because regardless of what people tell you, your PhD is such an important time in your career, because that's when you're supposed to be learning. That's when you're supposed to be asking questions. It's when you're supposed to be figuring a lot of things out. You have to have it figured out during your postdoc. Like at that point, they kind of expect you to like know what's going on and things like that. But in your PhD, like there's a lot of room for error. So I think making sure that you are sort of paying attention to all of those avenues that you could go down, and making sure that you're not going into an environment where they have a vendetta against another institution or another lab or whatever the case may be, because that might hurt you in the long run. When you say you need something from someone else and your PI hates everybody, well, they're not going to want to help you because you're in that lab. So
how do you vet that though? How do you vet that when you're not in the program already?
I mean, so the nice thing about PhD programs is they allow you to rotate. Usually your first or second year, they allow you to do like lab rotations. So you can rotate in different labs. And I would say it becomes apparent very quickly if you're in a toxic environment. Usually you can kind of like tell if that's the case. Like there are some people that I definitely know at the institution that I'm at right now that I would be like, super glad I'm not in your lab, like, you know, type scenario, because you just get that vibe from someone. It's like, something's like not right here.
Or just different personalities, different work styles, work ethics.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it may just be like, I'm an open book, you know, I'm pretty like friendly, like I converse with a lot of people at work. Some people aren't like that. Some people like to sit and like do what they're doing and they don't want to be bothered, but like that's not my style. So I would never funnel myself into a lab that's like that, because that's not how I learn. Like I definitely I like to, you know, ask questions. I like to do the thing that I said I was going to do. So if I'm not in a lab where I feel like I'm comfortable like asking questions, then, you know, that's a problem, 100% a problem. But it's all about like understanding how you work as an individual. So that's a lot of self-reflection that comes, and that's a lot of self-reflection that needs to happen before you commit to a lab.
Yeah, because somebody introverted might not want the pressure of feeling like they have to engage all day long, and that's not going to be a good fit for them.
Exactly, 100%. And there are people that I know just like that. I mean, we have people in my lab that are like that, and we know those people, and like you not necessarily tread lightly, but you know, you just understand that like that's how it is. And if you want to speak with them, you usually, you know, shoot them an email and you're like, hey, when can we connect? It's not necessarily a walk up talk kind of basis. Right. But I think if people have boundaries like that, people will communicate those boundaries, and it shouldn't be your responsibility to try and figure that out, but it's definitely your responsibility to figure out how you as a person work in a team setting.
Yeah.
So
when you're doing, have you done interviews already for your PhD programs?
Nope.
No.
I will be interviewing next weekend. I'll be down in Tempe, Arizona. You already know. So yeah, it'll be interesting. A lot of them are like weekend things. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's like 2 days. I think it's mostly cohesive. It's kind of like an all day thing. You're up at 8 in the morning. You're kind of going to an orientation where they sort of talk to you about the department and the things that are going on. And then you, ASU's interview particularly is kind of like back-to-back like mini interviews. So you're meeting with a lot of people throughout the day. So I'm going to need a lot of snacks and a lot of water.
Do you ask or do you plan on asking about assistantships for these programs, or is this information you have already going into it?
So I personally know of a few already. Sometimes they disclose that in the application. They'll be like, you know, are you interested in this or not? Like check yes or no. Right. And a lot of the time that's another way. Like not only do they pay you a baseline salary, guys, you guys can also TA or be a research assistant or whatever the case may be for like extra money on top of your PhD salary. It's definitely a lot more time management. So most people don't do it in their first year. They do it later. Some universities require that you teach, some do not. So that's also something to look out for. If you're not super interested in teaching, probably better for you to go to a program where it's optional. But I think ASU, they definitely have the option for you to TA or RA if you want. I'll probably teach most likely, just because I like to, and I think it's great. I would say exposure for keeping you like fresh on, like I said, that foundation. That's super important because it's going to be, important for you to hold that for 6 years, right, while not only stacking on a ton of other knowledge. You definitely want to keep what you already have, for sure. But yeah, it's totally acceptable to ask about money. I think people get uncomfortable in that situation, but it's your life. And the way that I chose all the PhD programs that I applied to, it was a large part of it was money. Because the salary, I would say, is kind of standard across the board, but $40,000, $35,000 in San Francisco is different than $35,000 in ASU. So definitely a lot of people don't tell you to factor that in.
Cost of living.
Yeah, cost of living. Guys, Boston is expensive. It is so expensive. I can't wait to leave, guys. I can't even tell you. Like it's a great, like, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot going on here. Just like there's a lot going on in like Stanford area and San Francisco and Seattle and all of these big cities, New York. But there's also a large price tag attached to that, and I think that's something that people should also weigh when they're choosing PhD programs. Try not to get super focused on the name of the institution that you're applying to. Like, Harvard is great, but with that comes a price tag. And the harsh reality of the world is that we have to afford, living. And if you're not a person that loves living with 5 roommates, probably not a great idea, but like those are things like definitely, take into account. If you don't mind, go for it. All you, good deal. But if you're more concerned about like having more like personal space and personal time and alone time and things like that, think about that when you're applying to schools, because I'm going to say your PhD can be as productive as you make it, whether that be, a PhD at Stanford or a PhD at University of Missouri. Your PhD is going to be as productive as you as an individual are. There are people that have come out of teeny tiny programs that have done really, really, really big things, but that's because they prioritize doing big things. And they don't have, definitely people have recommended saving the big names for your postdoc. If you plan to do a postdoc, at that point, you're getting a salary that's a lot higher than, you as a graduate student. So if you want to go do your postdoc at Yale, go do your postdoc at Yale. Like, you want to go do your postdoc, at the Buck Institute on Aging, do it, like 100%, because those are in high cost areas. But at that point, you're making a lot more money. So it's a different thing. You also get benefits. Ask about those in your PhD interview. Ask if you get dental. Ask if you get healthcare, because those are very, very, very important. And like, those are things you have to pay for out of your pocket. So if it's not included in your graduate package, like, you got to factor that in as well. So it's like these little teeny tiny hidden costs in the whole process that people don't tell you about until you're there. And then some people
blindsided by it.
Oh yeah. And then you're like, oh my God, like, how do I pay for this? Like, and if you're not in a position to have your family support you financially, which I'm not, that comes into play. And I think a lot of people are not, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people that their families do support them, but
it's not an option that's available to everybody, and everybody has to
absolutely
go with what they have.
Exactly. So yeah, and then the only other things that I would definitely say, definitely keep your LinkedIn network going. Cold emails to PIs are totally acceptable if you're looking for opportunities. How you write that email is very important. Don't just go on the internet and Google, cancer research top, investigators, and then take this guy's name, Joe Schmo, send him an email with like, I like what you're doing. I recommend going on like ResearchGate or something like that, finding a paper, their most recent publication, browse it. I'm not saying you have to like digest the whole thing. They're pretty dense. Research papers are pretty dense. They're not super fun to read. So, the way that I think about it is read the abstract, read the the conclusion
and the discussion.
Exactly. And then go from there. Like, if you have something positive to say, if you have an idea, if you have feedback, or if you're interested, there's a question, it's a lot easier to connect with someone when you have something organic to talk about, I would say. So like, don't just be like, oh, I really like what you're doing, will you accept me as a intern in your lab? Like, hold a conversation with them for a little bit longer and then ask for what you're interested in asking for. And I think that goes over way better than, just a cold email, because PIs get a lot of emails during the day. Mine specifically gets like hundreds a day. He has a person that just answers his emails all day. So they're getting a lot of people. So like, you have to think about, how am I going to stand out? And if you pose a good question, or if you're interested, or if you're eager, that goes over way better.
Do you even try to address in the first email like an interest to contribute to their work, or do you purely just?
You can. I mean, you can. I sometimes will, but I usually leave it until the end. Mm-hmm. Like of the email, like the last thing, like, it's like, oh, you're having a conversation, a little bit about who you are, why you're interested in their work, and then what you're hoping to get, like, whether that be like you trying to find a mentor, you trying to get like research experience, any of that. Ooh, let's see. Oh man. Honestly,
can you restate the question, or I can, just for the purpose?
Yeah. It says, how do you handle your professional advancement needs and those with your husband? What has been your experience with compromising your advancement without interrupting your spouses? So we are very driven individuals, both career-oriented individuals, and I definitely compromised a lot initially. So like I said, I moved all the way out to Seattle. So I basically like scrapped everything I had going and was like, okay, guess we can be together over here. So I sort of completely started over. He was in the military, which is, is the military. I'm sure people know exactly how that works. So it was a lot of moving around. I've actually never lived in the same place for more than like 2 years at all, and ever in my life. So for me, it was a lot of adjusting that I already knew how to do. But definitely having that conversation with your spouse is super important, because we've had the conversation multiple times. Like when I first moved out there was, I was trying to wrestle with this feeling of like animosity towards him, that I was giving up an aspect of my life that I didn't really want to. And he was gaining something and I was losing something. And that balance has to be maintained, throughout your whole relationship, because there are going to be periods of time where like I'm doing really, really big things. Like, for example, I'm interviewing for PhD programs, which means he's going to have to give up his job to come with me so I can do the thing that I want to do. But that's a conversation that we've had. We've also done the distance thing. It was okay. Like when I went to the NIA over the summer, I went by myself. He was here in Boston working. And I think now that technology is so much better, things like that are so much easier to handle. So it was a lot of like, oh, I'll FaceTime you, or I'll call you, or, I'll text you all day or something like that. but yeah, definitely we've had to have the conversation multiple times. Like when I moved out there, I gave up a lot of stuff. When we moved to Boston, actually, we moved to Boston because of his job, and like, so I moved again. So it's like, oh, okay, like I'm 2 points in the negative and you're 2 up here. Like, just wait, it's coming. But no. He's definitely been super, super supportive of like the things that I want to do. And I think when we first got into a relationship, I laid that on the table 100%. I was like, these are the things I'm hoping to accomplish in my life. If you're not interested in being along for that ride, sorry. But I think if you clear the air initially, things go over a lot better. There's still hard decisions that are being made. Like I applied to schools based on areas where he could also get a job, you know, where he could also, like, his industry was also there and my industry was there. So that definitely limited me, but that's just an example of compromising in the situation. And you're going to have to compromise your whole life. So you might as well get good at it, I guess, you know? But yeah, no, definitely just have the conversation. I think it goes over a lot better if you do it before the big decision happens, you know? You know, just spring it on them last minute. I've definitely done that. Doesn't go over well.
Yeah, but honey, I just got accepted into a PhD program across the United States. Might not be something you want to save.
Yeah, exactly. Might not want to save that. Well, it was kind of exactly. Well, and I wasn't sure when I applied to the internship at the National Institute of Health, like where I was going to be. So we were trying to figure out the dynamics. I'm like, do I go? Do I stay? Do I not? And definitely having a funded position was so much better because I was like renting a place in Baltimore, which in the grand scheme of places in the US to rent somewhere is like not that expensive. You know, you can get a room. There's a lot of universities, things like that. So I actually just rented a room in this apartment with like other people that were either doing rotations at like Johns Hopkins for like med school. So all of us were kind of like transplants, and he stayed here. So I think that like we're trying now to be like more together, but a lot of his like military journey too was a lot of us being apart. So I think like once you sort of get used to that, it becomes a lot more simple. So when I left to do what I wanted to do, it wasn't a huge change because he had already, you know, been leaving for 3 years or something like that, deploying back and forth with the military. So we just kind of adjusted that way.
It was already a dynamic you knew how to handle.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that I came from like a military family, so I'm very familiar with like how that plays out in itself. Like both my parents were in the military, so we just, you know, figured it out.
Are there any more questions that you guys want to add to the chat, or feel free to unmute and ask Bri directly?
Yeah, ask me anything you want to know.
This has been amazing. I mean, I'm personally on the PhD path, so this in particular has been amazing, but I really appreciate like your transparency and your openness and like the here's how it is and here's some of the good parts I learned and here's some of the not good parts I learned, because
I feel like they don't tell you the bad parts.
They don't tell you the bad parts, but then you're like, hey man, check out this bad part I just realized, and they're like, I know, doesn't it suck? And you're like, yeah,
you're like,
why didn't you tell me?
It's terrible, haha, told you. Then you're like, why would you just watch this happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the journey is going to be, you know, what it is. It's not going to be easy, and mine definitely hasn't been. There have been points in time where like I said, I wasn't sure if I was going to continue to do science, if I needed to pivot and do something else. That's also something that I encourage people to do, is evaluate what you want in your life. And I don't just mean like career wise. It's like, do you want to have a work-life balance? Do you want a job where you can, you know, like take off for a month? Like, do you want to travel? Do you want to have kids? Do you want to buy a house? Like all of those things really kind of need to go into the decision-making process that you have when you decide to set out on whatever journey it is that you're going to do, because you don't want to hit those roadblocks and then realize, you know, like I did when we moved to Boston. I thought, like, I was like, oh, Boston, great. Like there's a lot of opportunity there, like, you know, things like that. And I do have PhD interviews at schools in Massachusetts, in Boston specifically. But I've reevaluated my life, and I'm like, okay, how do I want to live? Like, do I want to live in an apartment for 6 years? Like, do I want my own space? Do we want to have kids? Like, all of these questions came up before I started applying. And, people don't talk to you about that. Like, when you're applying for PhD programs, they're like, yeah, do it. It's great. Like, be a scientist, but like, what does that actually entail? Like, how much do you have to sacrifice to do that? I mean, people give up a lot. There are people that I know that I work with at the lab that are, 30, 40 years old, and they don't have a spouse, and they don't have a house, and they don't have kids. And like, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if that's not what you want to do, there's definitely a way for you to have like everything that you want. It just may take some like weird finagling to do.
I really appreciate your comment on using an online education to benefit you, because I feel like although there are a lot of advancements in online programs, there's still those that hold, oh, you go to school online, as like, we're really not going to school.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, discredit that type of learning environment and comparing it to the traditional 4-year student who is straight out of high school, straight into 4 years. So I really do, I appreciate that, because I personally find it difficult to like make that seem like a good point, because I'm like, I didn't do the whole, I'm not in a sorority, and I didn't, I'm not in the honor society, and that's kind of hard, to translate to paper, so they can be like, okay, this person is serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the ways that you can make up the deficiencies in, like, for example, sororities or clubs or things like that, the way that I've leveraged it is the fact that ideas is a thing, is a fantastic opportunity for online students. And I think like the further that this develops, the better it will be for all of us. So huge thank you to Elle for that, because put that on your resume. Like, it is something that you are involved in, and that shows that you're not only just an online student. And the fact that you go to school online, again, I would argue is better than going to school, in a classroom where you're just sitting there and someone's telling you what to do, and like, you have deadlines, but it's not, as I would say, like, there's something, traditional education is great. It's great. Fantastic. 4 years, if you want to do 4 years sitting in a classroom, awesome. But it's just not the reality anymore. Like, there are plenty of people that go back to school. There are plenty of people that, are just starting out, and they're like, they decided to, wait, they had kids, like whatever, out of order. Online school is just filling in the gap that's there. And there are so many programs now, like Johns Hopkins is branching out their online degrees and things like that, and connecting like world campuses. And someone actually just dropped a link to edX, which I was in all of my links, because that's another thing. Like, if you don't want to go get a full master's, you can get a micro master's now. How cool is that? Like, you don't have to pay for a full master's, and you can still do the same thing. So I think that we have to change the stigma around online education, because I'm just as educated as someone that went to a 4-year degree, and I would say that we are probably more motivated than those students, because we know there's a deficiency, or this sort of idea that we're not learning the same things as someone else. And that's just not true, because the same university is giving the same curriculum. So those students that are going, they may have more class options, but we're still satisfying the same degree requirements. So I think that at the base of that, that's what you need to remember, is that you and that other person that's on campus are checking the same boxes. And once you have your bachelor's, they're not going to ask you how you got it.
Well, and that's a really important point too, is that our degrees say Arizona State University. They do not say Arizona State University Online. The naming of ideas specifically does not say online. And you can still go on there and be like, yeah, I was part of a student club that had monthly meetings and guest speakers, and I attended the events and I showed up, and it's about how you sell yourself, like Brie was talking about earlier.
Yeah,
and that is not to say that you should not talk about being an online student, but you can also do it differently. Like for me, Roxanne, you talk about, I went to school while I was a parent, and I was active in a club, and I balanced my home responsibilities, work responsibilities with extracurriculars to try to advance my own educational opportunities. Like, you don't actually have to say anything about online in terms of somebody else's perception of it. You get to shape their perception of how you present yourself.
Exactly. You get to decide what your online education means to you. Like, and that was something that I didn't realize. I had a really hard time writing statements of purpose that made me sound like I was confident in the education that I obtained, you know, because like at first I was like, well, man, like, I don't know how I'm going to apply to PhD programs because they're not going to accept me because I have this online degree, yada, yada, yada. Your transcript says nothing about that. So when you submit it, you don't even have to say that you go to online school if you don't want to. That is left up to you to decide if you want to deliver that information. And I'm pretty sure, I think Kevin, was that his name? Kevin, he just got into med school.
The first person, his name was Leo.
Oh, okay, Leo. Maybe, I don't know. There was another person probably that I ran into that.
Possible, the more time passes.
Yeah, got into med school, and like he didn't disclose at all that he went to online school. And I think that's something that you are going to have to decide. And I personally decided to just throw it out there because I'm like, look, I'm a great example of what comes out of online education, and there are plenty of us that will come out and will do successful things. And I don't see why we can't be just as competitive, if not more competitive, as a traditional student.
And also, it depends on the program. My understanding is it depends on the program as well. Like med schools have much stricter requirements as far as how they look at it. But our program is also not 100% online. The organic chemistry labs, which is a requirement for biological science and biochemistry, they're on person. On campus / in person. That's what I was trying to say. And the selling yourself thing is, you know, if you want to talk about that, you take your coursework online, you say, I learned how to effectively time manage after picking up my kid from school and, you know, raising a human being, and had to figure out how to balance my coursework with my personal life and get it all done and study effectively. There are ways that you can display the skills that you've picked up through this program. Absolutely. Without explicitly saying, oh, well, I'm an online student, and letting somebody else draw the conclusion of what that means about your education.
Exactly. I mean, I filled in a huge gap. Like, I not only told them that I was an online student, I told them that I almost failed out of college. Like, so these are two big things that, like.
But if you had stopped your application there, it's probably as far as your application would have gone. It's about how you show it.
Exactly, 100%, you know, and then you say, these are all the things that I've done since then. Like, since, you know, enrolling at this university, I've accomplished this, and this, you know, and we'll see how it goes in interviews. But I mean, from everybody that I've spoken to and everybody that I've come in contact with and everybody that I've met in a lab or outside of a lab or networking or whatever the case may be, they admire me more for being an online student and still having a job and still doing these research experiences and still having time to apply to PhD programs and to get good grades and to do all of this stuff simultaneously. Like, they look at me like I'm insane, and I'm like, I might be, or I'm just very driven, like, you know. But I think that you definitely will have to decide for yourself how you feel about your education. And like, for me, I'm like, this is it. I'm either going to be great or I'm not going to be anything at all. And like, I've chosen to take the higher path, I would say, hopefully. We'll see how these interviews go.
I mean, but honestly, it's an accomplishment just to get to the point of interviewing. So congratulations.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, it's funny because I was just honestly talking to my husband about this. He was like, it's so crazy what can happen in 6 months. Like in December, I was like sending off these applications into the void. And I was just like, dear God, hopefully someone gets back to me. because it only really takes one opportunity. Like, I'm telling you, like, I didn't even expect to get as many interviews as I got, and I was honestly just shocked at like what I just wanted one. And that's the thing. I think, like, being an online student has just made me appreciate some of the small things that happen in life, where it's like some kids are like, well, I expect to get into XYZ school and things like that. I'm like, I'm just trying to get into one. Like, I just need one opportunity here.
Yeah, but you also have to remember too that those people that are presenting themselves as the epitome of confidence and they're just going to get in everywhere probably have the same feelings as you do. They're just not as open and honest about it.
Listen, I will be the first one to tell you that I have cried far too many times in the past year. Like, this last year of school for me has just been so difficult, and like, that's acceptable. Like, I think that oftentimes, you know, people ask like, oh, what are you going to do when you graduate? One, you don't have to answer that question at all. It's okay not to know what you want to do. It's okay not to get a higher, like, it's okay. It's okay to stop at a bachelor's degree. Like, that's acceptable. Cause like, I feel like so many people, when I said, I was like, oh, I'm not like really sure. Cause I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a PhD or whatever. They were like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I have a bachelor's. Is that not enough anymore? Like, what's going on? Yeah, but I mean, we just have to do stuff and things, you know, if you definitely don't get the games for sure. Yeah, figure it out for sure. And
by that, I don't mean just like figure it out, but I mean like, you're not going to know until you know. So you just put yourself out there and see what comes of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of experiences that like, I don't think I would have, I don't think that I would still be trying to pursue a PhD if I didn't get into a lab and absolutely love what I'm doing. And I don't say I love what I'm not saying I love what I do every single day, because sometimes I'm really, really, really defeated by the whole process. But at the end of the day, like, I'm still trying to do that one thing. And like, it just takes, you know, maybe like a day to reset or something like that. And I think like not enough people say that, you know, you don't have to be trying to grind it out every day. If you can't do
balance back for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I said, I'm the first person to tell people like I cry frequently, you know, about like just, you know, and there's like a lot of anxiety surrounded by the process. I've involved so many people in this intimate part of my life, like applying to PhD programs and things like that. You almost feel obligated to succeed. And I'm just learning that like, it's okay to not do that, you know, like it's okay to not succeed at something the first time that you try to do it.
Yeah.
But if you decide that's what you want to do, then like I definitely recommend keep at it. Like, people will tell you no far more times than they will tell you yes. So we're just like definitely just like waiting for that one yes.
Yeah. Bri, thank you so much.
Yes.
Really appreciate you coming and speaking with everybody and answering questions. And if you want to send me those links, I will add them to our resources as well for people.
Sweet. Yes, I can totally do that. And I will definitely, like, if anybody, you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, all that fun stuff. Add me to your network. I'm always around.
We started an ideas network or group as well within LinkedIn to try to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You'll have to send me a link to it or something like that. And I'll
you know, I think we need to figure out a better, because it's on there and it's under the announcements for the Facebook page.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So,
yeah, like down at the bottom.
Oh, maybe even like an external resources page that we put under files or something and try to like direct people. Yeah. We've also talked about trying to open a Slack workspace for ideas.
That'd be super cool. Yeah, that would be definitely really cool. If I can help anyone in like any journey that they're trying to do, whether it be like, you know, reading a resume, reading a statement of purpose, I'm always available. My email's always, you know, my inbox is always open. So feel free to ask me all the questions and I will definitely update you on my, where I decide to go.
Please do. Good luck with the journey and everything that it entails.
Yes. Thanks for like having me and listening to like this long spiel about my life. Oh my God.
I honestly don't even remember now how we started talking. I know that you reached out to me about t-shirts and then and I'm like, well, this is fascinating. And I was like, yeah, you want to come talk? I think you asked me I think you said something like, well, if there's anybody that like, you know, at Harvard, because I know people at Harvard, that happens, who might want to come talk to the group. And I was like, yes. Also, do you want to?
Yeah, you were like, yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I've like some interesting people that I know and things like that. So I will definitely reach out to them and see if they want to speak
That would
and
be great.
all that stuff. Yeah, it's crazy to think people are like actually interested in like my life story.
Well, okay, but like we've had a lot of people on for guest speakers who are like already in industry, already have their degrees, they're teaching, you know, whatever, and it's great. It's absolutely fabulous. But you are like half and half, a little bit.
Yeah, it's like
You
work
are,
in progress here.
yeah, well, still enrolled in the same degree program, and that's valuable. That's valuable.
Yeah, 100%. And if you do find an internship and you are looking for a way to get credit for it, the class is Bio 484 that I am in, and I will make sure like I write that down and such to put on like the resources.
SMS is also currently launching their own version of that for the
sweet.
Biochemistry.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, that came up during our advising guest speaking, is that they've been working on creating that course for the biochemistry students as well.
Yeah, it's honestly, I mean, like there's an agreement between the two schools and like that's it, but you can pretty much go anywhere and do anything, and that's awesome because that award it gives like us an opportunity to go out and like get, you know, an experience like that maybe honestly an on-ground student couldn't get really.
Yeah. So you're getting course credit from Arizona State University for your work with Harvard University.
Yep. So I'm actually let's see, I don't even know where I put it. I'm actually I'm a student at both schools. So I'm a visiting research fellow at Harvard and like a student at ASU. So, I mean,
did you ever have any like limitations when you were trying, or even just like perceptions of limitations when you were applying to the Harvard position for the fact that you were not a Harvard student?
Nope. And it's funny because they actually take a lot of students that are not Harvard students because, I mean, there's so many labs. Like there's not only Harvard labs, but they partner with Boston Children's. They partner with a couple Dana-Farber Cancer Institute is out here, things like that. So they're kind of this network. The Broad Institute is out here as well. MIT is also over here. BC, Tufts University is also here. So there's a lot of opportunities like in this area, and they will oftentimes take students for like summer experiences or things like that. So if you're looking for something to do like in your area, definitely start looking for schools that have partnerships with hospitals, and like that's going to be your way into like research or into clinical experience or whatever you're like looking to find. And they're pretty flexible, Bio 484, with like there's no real restrictions on like what constitutes an internship. So as long as there's agreement, I think per hour. So like, for example, I'll get like 3 hours of like 3 hours for the class. Yeah, course credits, and you have to hit so many hours, but there's like a calculator to see like how many hours you'd have to work a week to earn 3 credit hours for it, which isn't that much. I'm part-time, I believe, so it's, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so hopefully that was helpful in any way, shape, or form.
Very. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions or anything that they want to know, or, you know, anything I can help you with, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Will do. All right, so we will end the recording. That will be posted and available for students. We will get those links from Bree, which will also be posted. Nikki's typing up meeting notes, which will be posted when she finishes them. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming and for this group. You massively impress me every time because we never have issues with people, you know, not being respectful or it's just it's an amazing group, and I am really grateful to be a part of it, and this stuff is amazing, so thank you.
Thanks.
All right, have a good night, guys.
Yeah.